The neutral space station Galaxion Prime hummed with the tension of powerful beings gathered under one roof. Representatives from the galaxy's most formidable civilizations, the Telothian Dominion, Zyphor Trade Alliance, and Hakar Federation, sat at the negotiating table, their elaborate robes and ceremonial attire reflecting their cultural grandeur. At the head of the table, standing tall and intimidating in his plain black suit, was human ambassador Thomas Connors. He had no need for adornments or titles. His reputation was enough. The air was tense, and the other diplomats, despite their own impressive backgrounds, can't help but feel the weight of his presence. The Zyphorian diplomat, adorned in emerald scales and golden sashes, stole a glance at Connors, then quickly looked away. Even seated, Thomas radiated a presence that made the others feel small. His sharp grey eyes scanned the room, calculating every move, every word, before they were spoken. His jawline, chiseled as if sculpted from stone, never betrayed a single emotion. The Telothian ambassador, a hulking figure with 4 muscular arms and a crown of bone-like protrusions, growled low to his colleague. "Humans, they are not like us. They don't flinch. They don't back down. Negotiating with one feels like preparing for battle." The Hakar delegate, a spindly insectoid being with translucent wings, clicked its mandibles nervously. "Yes, but this one is worse. This is Connors, the iron-jawed diplomat. I've heard stories of him. He's brought empires to their knees with words alone." Thomas, oblivious to the whispered fear around him, leaned back in his chair. "Shall we begin?" he said, his voice low and commanding, cutting through the tension like a blade. The negotiations commenced, and as the hours ticked by, Thomas's unyielding demeanor wore down the alien delegates. His demands were firm, his arguments precise, and his counterpoints devastating. One by one, the alien leaders conceded ground, their pride bruised under the weight of his words. But just as Thomas leaned forward to deliver another point, his communicator buzzed. The sharp, unexpected sound made the room fall silent. Thomas glanced down at the device. His expression froze. For the first time that day, a flicker of emotion crossed his face. His eyes widened briefly, then narrowed, as if steeling himself for something far more daunting than the room of alien powerhouses before him. "Excuse me," he said, his voice uncharacteristically hurried. He rose from his chair, leaving the delegates stunned. The room falls silent. The alien diplomats exchange glances, their eyes narrow, and their minds race. "What just happened?" whispers one of the Zyphorian representatives. "Why would he leave now?" "No idea," murmured the Hakar delegate, antennae twitching. "But did you see his face? That was not the face of a warrior. That was fear. But I've never seen a human act like that." One of the Telothians, a seasoned warrior, whispers, "I've heard rumors. I think we've just witnessed something we shouldn't have." In the adjacent room, Thomas pressed a button on his communicator. The screen lit up with the name, Emily. He sighed. "Yes, my love?" On the other end of the line, a soft but firm voice replied, "Thomas, did you forget?" Thomas winced. He could feel his carefully crafted image of invincibility crumbling. "Forget what, darling?" "The trash, Thomas. You promised to take it out before you left home. I just got home, and it's still sitting there." Thomas ran a hand through his hair. I'm so sorry. I meant to do it, but I got caught up in preparing for the summit." "Thomas," Emily said, her tone laced with the kind of disappointment that cuts deeper than any blade. "I reminded you 3 times." "Yes, I know, and I'm really sorry," he said, his voice dropping to a pleading whisper. "I'll make it up to you, I promise. I'll take care of it the moment I get back." Through the thin walls of the adjacent chamber, muffled words escape, though not enough to make out the entire conversation. They can, however, catch tones. The Telothian warrior leans slightly toward the Hakar delegate and whispers, "Did you hear that?" He apologized. The Hakar diplomat's antennae quiver with anxiety. Humans don't apologize unless it's to someone with absolute power. I've studied their history. Even in war, their leaders refuse to show weakness. But now, for this human to apologize so readily. His voice trails off in fear. "Did you hear how he sounded?" Another alien chimes in, a Zyphorian with emerald scales glinting under the fluorescent lights. That wasn't just an apology. That was fear, a deep, primal fear. The Telothian ambassador grits his teeth. Whatever entity was on the other end of that call, they must hold unfathomable power over him. He didn't just promise to fix his mistake, he begged to make amends. A being who can make a human beg must be unstoppable. The Zyphorian leans in conspiratorially. Do you think it's their true leader? A shadow figure who governs all of humanity from behind the scenes? Someone so terrifying that even the iron-jawed diplomat dares not defy them. The Zyphorian leaned in conspiratorially. Do you think it's their true leader? A shadow figure who governs all of humanity from behind the scenes? Someone so terrifying that even the iron-jawed diplomat dares not defy them? No, interjected the Hakkar delegate, his analytical mind racing. This isn't about political power. This is personal. Did you hear the way he said, my love? It was reverent. As if he was speaking to a being of unmatched grace and authority. Perhaps this is humanity's divine ruler. A god, maybe? A matriarchal figure so revered that her will shapes the course of their species. The Tilothian warrior's claws twitched nervously. A god who enforces loyalty through terror. Did you see how he was sweating? Even we, the mightiest warriors of the Tilothian dominion, do not sweat in battle, yet this human quaked at her words. The Zyphorian tilted his head. Or perhaps she is no god. Perhaps she is their ultimate weapon. A secret force that humans keep hidden until the time is right. Someone so powerful that even their greatest warriors, their diplomats and their leaders obey her unconditionally. The room grew tense. Speculation continued to swirl, and with every whispered theory, the imagined power of this mysterious human figure grew. Meanwhile, in the other room. Also, don't forget to bring the groceries, Emily asked gently. Connors froze. Groceries? Yes, groceries, she repeated, crossing her arms. I told you 2 days ago. Milk, eggs, bread and coffee. The essentials. You promised you'd pick them up on your way back. The ambassador rubbed the back of his neck. I might have forgotten to write it down. Thomas? Her tone sharpened ever so slightly, and Connors, who had stared down intergalactic warlords without blinking, immediately stiffened. I'll pick them up. Absolutely, he said quickly. Anything else? Yes, she said, narrowing her eyes. Don't forget the basil. I'm making pasta tonight. Basil. Got it. And, she added, her voice softening, don't come back late like last time. Dinner is at 8. Love you. I love you too, Connors replied, his voice suddenly softer, almost sheepish. Back at the negotiation table. What kind of power is this? Whispered the Hakkar diplomat. To bend a human like that. It's as if Thomas himself is a child in front of this person. Across the table, the Zyphorian delegate coiled his sleek, serpentine body tighter around his chair, his golden ceremonial sashes glittering faintly in the ambient light. I overheard the word groceries, he whispered to his neighbouring diplomat, his forked tongue flicking nervously. Groceries, the other Zyphorian echoed, his scales dimming to a muted green, a sign of confusion. What in the 9 nebulas does that mean? The first Zyphorian's slit-pupil eyes narrowed. It's a code. It must be. Humans wouldn't interrupt an intergalactic summit for trivialities. The groceries are likely a euphemism for resources or weapons. Perhaps he's securing last-minute supplies for an impending war. The second delegate nodded thoughtfully, his tail flicking. And what of basil? That could be a reference to a biochemical agent, no? Precisely. A rare compound, perhaps. Something critical to their plans. Meanwhile, the Hakkar delegates whispered in hushed tones. The time constraint. Did you hear it? Dinner at 8. That wasn't an invitation. That was an ultimatum, murmured one delegate. His colleague tilted his angular head. It must be a deadline. Perhaps their matriarch, if that's who contacted him, requires full compliance by that hour. Humans are bound by strange, rigid rituals. Yes, the first Hakkar agreed, his antennae quivering. And the term love. It was repeated, twice. What significance does it hold in their culture? I believe it's a pledge, a declaration of loyalty, perhaps. Connors may have been renewing his fealty to this shadowy figure. It's likely part of their hierarchical structure, one we do not yet understand. The Tilothian ambassador, having overheard the Hakkar's frantic murmurs, leaned back in his chair, his hulking form casting a shadow over the table. A matriarch, you say? He mused, stroking the bony ridges on his chin. It makes sense, the Zyphorian delegate hissed. This Emily must be a figure of immense power, a ruler hidden from the galaxy's view, commanding her subjects with absolute authority. Or, the Hakkar interjected, his voice trembling, she is not merely a ruler. She could be the architect of humanity's rise, a being so calculating and fearsome that even Connors bends to her will. By the time Connors resumed his seat at the head of the table, the room was alive with silent dread. "Ambassador," began the Telothian, his voice gruff but tinged with hesitation, "is everything in order?" Connors looked up, his expression unreadable, and gave a single, curt nod. "It's handled," he said simply, his tone final. The alien delegates exchanged uneasy glances. It's handled! What did that mean? Had he just prevented an intergalactic catastrophe? Or perhaps ensured one? As the alien delegates departed Galaxion Prime, their whispers filled the station's halls. "We underestimated them," the Telothian ambassador growled to his aides. "Humans do not rule through strength alone. They are guided by forces we cannot comprehend." The Zyphorian delegate nodded. "This Emily, whoever she is, she must be the true architect of their strategy. Connors is merely her emissary." Meanwhile, aboard his shuttle back to Earth, Thomas Connors leaned back in his chair, exhausted but satisfied. He had secured vital treaties and resources for humanity, all while managing to survive the most harrowing challenge of the day. He glanced at his communicator, smiling faintly as he reread Emily's grocery list. "Milk, eggs, bread, coffee, basil," he muttered. "Got it." Little did he know, the galaxy's most powerful civilizations were already spinning tales of the shadowy overlord who had tamed the iron-jawed diplomat, and the whispers of her name, Emily, were spreading like wildfire through the stars.